What if the place you call home is slowly breaking you, and you don't even notice it yet? In this video, I'll share my real story of love, silence, small arguments, and quiet healing inside our first home in America, and how the simplest words, even in broken English, changed everything. Stay with me, because the answer to what makes a house a home might surprise you. A question that won't let go. Maybe you're sitting in your room right now. Everything looks fine. A chair, a bed, maybe a cup of coffee getting cold on your desk. You call it home. But deep inside, something feels off. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a quiet emptiness that stays longer than it should. I've lived like that. Right now, I live in a small house in America. Not the kind you see in movies. No perfect white fence. No big backyard. Just a very normal place. But if you stood outside my door, you might think they have everything. And that's the dangerous part. Because sometimes, when everything looks okay, that's exactly when things are quietly falling apart. My day starts a lot like yours. I wake up, walk into the living room, and see the light coming through the window. I say something simple, good morning. Sometimes I get a reply. Sometimes I don't. And you know what? That silence didn't happen in one day. It was built slowly, over time. Have you ever felt like you live with someone, but somehow, you still feel alone? It's one of the strangest feelings in the world. In our first home together in America, I used to believe that home was a destination. You work, you earn money, you find a place, and boom, you have a home. Simple, like a formula. But real life doesn't work like that. Your brain loves simple stories. It wants to believe that if you do A plus B, you will get C. But life, especially love and marriage, is not math. It's more like a long conversation where you never know what the next sentence will be. Here's something interesting from psychology. When people feel safe in their basic needs, like housing and food, they start to notice emotional gaps more clearly. In other words, when you stop worrying about rent or bills, you start asking, why am I still not happy? That's exactly what happened to me. I remember one very normal evening. No arguments. No drama. We were having dinner. The TV was on, the light was soft, everything looked perfect from the outside. And then I realized we weren't talking. Not because we had nothing to say, but because we didn't know how to begin. Sound familiar? When you don't use a language for a long time, you forget how to speak. That's true for English. But it's also true for emotions. We used to talk a lot. Slow English, broken grammar, but full of life. How was your day? I miss you. Let's try again. Simple sentences, but they had the power to keep us close. Then slowly, they disappeared. Not because we didn't care anymore, but because life started getting in the way. Work. Tiredness. Small misunderstandings that were never explained. And the funny thing is, you don't realize you're losing your home until it's almost gone. You think home is where you return to. But actually, home is where you feel understood. And when you don't feel understood anymore, it doesn't matter where you are. You still feel lost. There's a study that shows people feel most lonely not when they are alone, but when they are with someone and still feel no emotional connection. Your brain literally reacts to loneliness like physical pain. It sends signals, something is wrong. Fix this. But what do we usually do? We scroll on our phones. We turn on the TV. We tell ourselves, it's fine. And then the next day, repeats. I did that too. For a long time. Until one day, I asked myself a question I had never asked before. What makes a house a home? Not Google. Not a book. A real question, to myself. And the answer didn't come right away. It started with very small things. A longer look. A simpler question. A moment where I didn't let the silence grow. You see, the problem wasn't that we didn't know enough English. The problem was, we didn't use what we knew to connect. You don't need big vocabulary to save a relationship. Sometimes, you just need to say, I'm here. Or, I don't understand, but I want to. It sounds so simple, you might ignore it. But those simple words were exactly what we lost. And that's why I'm telling you this story. Not to say everything became perfect. Not to pretend that building a home is easy. But to show you that, if something feels off in the place you call home, you are not alone. And more importantly, there is a way to change it. Not with big steps. Not with dramatic decisions. But with small words, repeated every day. In the next parts, I'll show you exactly what happened inside that house. The strange conversations. The long silences. The mistakes, and the small things that slowly brought us back. And maybe, somewhere in my story, you will see yourself. Because sometimes, you don't need a new house. You just need to learn how to live again, in the one you already have. Behind our front door. If you walked into our house on a random Tuesday morning, you would probably think everything was normal. The door opens with a soft click. Shoes are lined up near the entrance. There's a light smell of coffee in the air. The kitchen counter is clean, maybe too clean. Sunlight comes through the window and lands quietly on the floor, like it belongs there. Nothing is broken. And that's exactly the problem. Because the most dangerous kind of distance in a relationship doesn't look like chaos. It looks like peace. It looks like routine. It looks like two people doing everything right, except actually connecting. Our life in America right now is simple. We wake up early. We have breakfast, sometimes together, sometimes not. A quick "did you sleep well?" A short "I'm heading out." Then the door closes, and the day begins. If you listen closely, our conversations are efficient. Clean. Almost professional. Did you pay the bill? Yes, I did. Don't forget the appointment. I won't. No mistakes. No long pauses. No laughter. Just information. There's something strange about that, right? When we first met, our English was slower. Messier. We searched for words. We laughed when we said something wrong. Back then, a simple sentence like "I like talking to you" felt like a big win. Now, our English is better. Clearer. Faster. But somehow, our connection feels weaker. Isn't that ironic? There's a concept in psychology called emotional bandwidth. Your brain has limited energy each day, and most of it gets used by work, stress, responsibilities. By the time you come home, you don't feel like talking anymore. Not because you don't care, but because you're tired. So what do? You choose the easier option. Silence. At first, silence feels comfortable. No pressure. No risk of saying the wrong thing. But over time, silence becomes a habit. and habits build your life. In our house, silence became the third person in the room. It sat with us during dinner. It followed us from the living room to the bedroom. It stayed even when we were right next to each other. And the strange part? We got used to it. Have you ever adjusted to something that quietly hurts you? That's what we did. One evening, I remember sitting on the couch, holding my phone, scrolling without really seeing anything. She was sitting next to me, also on her phone. Two people. One couch. Two separate worlds. If someone took a picture of that moment, it would look peaceful. No fighting. No sadness. Just calm. But inside, it felt empty. Your brain is very good at protecting you from discomfort. It tells you, this is fine. It helps you avoid difficult conversations. It keeps you in your comfort zone. But comfort is not the same as happiness. Comfort is staying where nothing changes. Happiness requires connection. And connection requires effort. That's the part most people don't want to hear. Because effort means you have to try. You have to risk being misunderstood. You have to speak, even when it feels awkward. Especially when it feels awkward. There was a moment I can't forget. She asked me a very simple question, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yes." That was it. One word. One quick answer. Conversation closed. But the truth? I wasn't okay. And deep down, I think she knew that. That's the thing about relationships. You don't always need perfect English to understand each other. Sometimes, you feel the distance without any words at all. Later that night, I kept thinking about that moment. Why did I say yes so quickly? Why didn't I say more? The answer was uncomfortable. Because it felt easier. Because explaining how I felt would take time. It would take energy. It might even lead to a deeper conversation I wasn't ready for. So I chose the shortcut. And that shortcut cost us connection. Here's something simple, but powerful. Every time you choose convenience over honesty, you create a small gap. One gap is nothing. But hundreds of small gaps become distance. That's how two people slowly become strangers in the same home. Not through big fights, but through small, repeated silence. In America, life moves fast. Everyone is busy. Everyone is chasing something, career, stability, success. And without realizing it, you bring that same speed into your home. You start treating your relationship like a checklist. Tasks completed. Problems avoided. But love doesn't grow in checklists. It grows in presence. It grows in moments where you stop, look at the other person, and say something real, even if it's imperfect. That night, I didn't fix anything. I didn't suddenly become better. But I started to notice. And awareness is always the first step. The next morning, everything looked the same. The same kitchen. The same sunlight. The same routine. But inside, something was different. I realized that this house, this place we worked so hard to build, was slowly turning into just a place to sleep. Not a place to live. Not a place to feel. And that thought stayed with me. Because if a house can slowly lose its warmth without any noise, then maybe, just maybe, it can also be rebuilt the same way. Quietly. Slowly. One moment at a time. In the next part, I'll tell you about the moment we realized something had to change, and how the smallest, most imperfect conversations in English became the beginning of something new. Because sometimes, the words you think are too simple are the ones that matter the most. Strangers in the same home. Imagine living with someone you love, and slowly realizing you don't really know them anymore. Not because they changed into someone else overnight, but because, day by day, you stopped paying attention to who they were becoming. That realization didn't hit me like a loud crash. It came quietly. One night, I walked into the kitchen around 10 p.m. The house was silent. Not peaceful, just quiet in a way that felt a little too heavy. The lights were still on, but it didn't feel warm. It felt distant. She was there, standing by the sink. For a second, I just watched. Not in a romantic way. More like you're looking at something familiar, but trying to remember how it used to feel. I said, "Hey." She turned, gave a small smile, and said, "Hey." That was it. Two simple words. No emotion behind them. No follow-up. Just sound. If you heard that conversation, you wouldn't think anything was wrong. But if you felt it, you would know everything was wrong. Have you ever had a moment like that? Where the person in front of you is the same person you chose, but somehow, the connection is gone? Psychologists call this emotional drift. It doesn't happen suddenly. It's the result of small disconnections over time. Conversations that never happened. Feelings that were never expressed. Questions that were never asked. And one day, you wake up and realize you're no longer on the same page. You're not even reading the same book. In our home, we didn't fight much. No big arguments. No dramatic scenes. And for a long time, I thought that was a good thing. But here's the truth no one tells you. The absence of conflict is not the presence of connection. Sometimes, it's the absence of honesty. We avoided difficult conversations so well, that we also avoided meaningful ones. It's like going to the gym and only lifting the lightest weights. You won't get hurt. But you also won't grow. That's exactly what happened to us. We became careful. Careful with words. Careful with tone. Careful not to say anything that might create tension. And slowly, we stopped saying anything real at all. There was a moment that made everything clear. We were sitting at the dining table. Dinner was almost finished. Plates half empty. TV noise in the background. The usual scene. Then she asked, "Do you ever feel like something is missing?" It wasn't a dramatic question. She didn't look angry. Just tired. And for a second, I froze. Because I knew exactly what she meant. But I didn't know how to answer. My brain started doing what it always does, searching for the right sentence. The perfect English. Something that sounded calm, controlled, safe. And while I was thinking, the moment passed. I said, "I don't know. Maybe we're just tired." That was the safe answer. That was the wrong answer. You see, sometimes the biggest problem isn't that you don't know English well enough. It's that you're too focused on saying it perfectly, instead of saying it honestly. Looking back, I realize I didn't need a perfect sentence. I just needed a real one. Something like, "Yes. I feel it too." But I didn't say that. And that small moment created more distance. There's a concept in communication called microconnections. These are small, everyday moments where you choose to connect or disconnect. A question. A response. A glance. A tone. Each one seems insignificant. But together, they build or break relationships. That night, we had a chance to create a micro-connection. And we missed it. After dinner, we went back to our routine. She cleaned up. I checked my phone. No argument. No discussion. Just quiet. But this time, the silence felt different. It wasn't comfortable anymore. It felt like a question waiting for an answer. Later, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. My mind kept replaying that moment at the table. Do you ever feel like something is missing? The question was simple. But it stayed with me. Because deep down, I knew the answer wasn't maybe. It was yes. And not just for me. For both of us. Have you ever ignored something important, just because you didn't know how to deal with it? That's what I was doing. Avoiding the truth doesn't make it disappear. It just makes it quieter. And the quieter it gets, the harder it is to face. In the days that followed, I started noticing things I had ignored before. The way we stopped asking real questions. The way we filled silence with screens. The way our conversations became shorter, safer, emptier. We weren't fighting. But we weren't growing either. We were existing. Together. But not really together. And that's when it hit me. A house can be full of furniture, full of light, full of everything you need. And still feel empty. Because what makes a home isn't what you put inside it. It's what you share inside it. That realization was uncomfortable. Because it meant something had to change. Not the house. Not the job. Not the schedule. Us. But change doesn't start with big actions. It starts with awareness. And then, a decision. A decision to stop pretending everything is fine. A decision to speak, even if your voice is not perfect. A decision to try, even if it feels awkward. In the next part, I'll show you the moment when we almost gave up, when everything felt too far gone, and why a few simple, imperfect English sentences became the turning point we didn't expect. Because sometimes, the distance between two people isn't measured in miles. It's measured in the words they never say. The small words that saved us. Have you ever noticed how the most important moments in your life don't look important at all, until much later? They don't come with music. No warning. No sign that says, pay attention, this will change everything. They just happen. And if you're not careful, you miss them. That's exactly what almost happened to us. It wasn't a big fight. Not a dramatic night. No shouting, no tears. Just another quiet evening that looked exactly like all the others. But something inside me felt different. Not stronger. Not braver. Just tired of pretending everything was okay. That kind of tired hits differently. It's not the kind that sleep can fix. It's the kind that comes from repeating the same emotional pattern over and over again, hoping somehow it will change on its own. Spoiler, it doesn't. That night, we were sitting in the living room. The TV was on, but neither of us was really watching. Just background noise filling the space between us. She sat on one side of the couch. I sat on the other. Same room. Same house. Same silence. And for a moment, I almost let it happen again. I almost picked up my phone. I almost escaped into the same easy distraction. But something stopped me. Maybe it was that question from a few days ago still echoing in my mind. Do you ever feel like something is missing? Or maybe it was the quiet realization that if I didn't do something now, nothing would change. So I did something small. Something uncomfortable. Something very simple. I put my phone down. And I said, "Can I ask you something?" She looked at me. Not surprised. Not excited. Just curious. "Yeah," she said. And suddenly, my brain froze. Have you ever had that moment where you want to say something important, but the words just don't come out? That was me. I knew what I felt. I just didn't know how to say it. And here's the funny part, it wasn't because my English wasn't good enough. It was because I was afraid. Afraid of saying the wrong thing. Afraid of making things worse. Afraid that maybe she didn't feel the same way anymore. So I did what most people do. I simplified. I didn't search for perfect grammar. I didn't try to sound smart. I just said the most honest thing I could find. I feel a little far from you. That was it. Not poetic. Not impressive. Not even a full, perfect sentence. But it was real. And for a second, nothing happened. She didn't respond immediately. She just looked at me. And in that silence, my brain started panicking. Was that too much? Was that too late? Should I have said something else? But then, she said something I didn't expect. Me too. 2 words. Simple. Clear. And suddenly, everything shifted. You see, connection doesn't always require long conversations. Sometimes, it starts with recognition. I feel it too. That's all it takes to break the illusion that you're alone in what you're feeling. In psychology, this is called emotional validation. When someone acknowledges your feeling without judging or fixing it, your brain relaxes. It stops defending. It starts opening. That's exactly what happened in that moment. The distance between us didn't disappear. But it became visible. And once you can see something, you can start to change it. We didn't suddenly fix everything that night. We didn't have a deep, perfect conversation. In fact, the rest of our talk was a little awkward. There were pauses. There were moments where we didn't know what to say. Our English wasn't perfect. Our sentences were short. Sometimes incomplete. But for the first time in a long time, we were actually talking. Not exchanging information. Not managing tasks. Talking. Real talking. I think we stopped trying, I said. She nodded. I think we got used to being quiet, she added. And that sentence hit hard. Because she was right. We didn't lose our connection in one moment. We lost it in hundreds of small moments where we chose comfort over effort. Silence over honesty. Distance over vulnerability. And now, we were doing the opposite. Slowly. Imperfectly. But intentionally. There's something powerful about speaking in simple English. It forces you to be clear. It removes the extra noise. You don't hide behind complicated words. You say what you feel, or you don't say anything at all. That night, simple English became our advantage. I miss how we used to talk, I said. I miss it too, she replied. No grammar tricks. No complex structure. Just truth. And here's the thing most people don't realize. You don't rebuild a relationship with big promises. You rebuild it with small, consistent moments. A question. An answer. A pause where you stay, instead of leaving. That night didn't fix everything. But it changed the direction. And direction matters more than speed. Because when you're going the wrong way, moving faster only takes you further away. We didn't need to move fast. We just needed to turn around. And that turn started with one imperfect sentence. I feel a little far from you. If you're watching this right now, maybe you're thinking about your own situation. Maybe there's someone sitting next to you, and there's a distance you don't know how to close. Maybe you're waiting for the right moment. The perfect words. The perfect mood. But here's the truth. That moment doesn't come. You create it. With something small. Something real. Something simple. In the next part, I'll show you what happened after that night, how we went from one honest sentence to rebuilding something we thought we lost, and why the smallest daily habits changed everything inside our home. Because sometimes, the difference between a house and a home is just one sentence you're brave enough to say. Small clashes, big distance. You would think that after that honest conversation, everything would start getting better. That's what movies teach us, right? One emotional moment. One breakthrough. And suddenly, the relationship is healed. Real life doesn't work like that. In fact, sometimes, things feel even harder after you open up. Because now, you can't pretend anymore. After that night, something changed between us. Not dramatically. Not instantly. But there was a shift. We were more aware. More present. And strangely, more sensitive. It's like turning on a light in a messy room. Before, you couldn't see the mess, so it didn't bother you. Now, you see everything. And suddenly, it feels overwhelming. That's exactly what happened inside our home. The silence didn't disappear overnight. But now, every quiet moment felt louder. Every small misunderstanding felt bigger. Every difference we ignored before started to show. And most of those differences? They came from the way we lived and the way we thought. Life in America teaches you independence very quickly. You learn to manage your time, your space, your responsibilities. You respect personal boundaries. You don't ask too many questions. You don't interfere. On paper, that sounds healthy. But inside a relationship, it can create distance. Because independence, when taken too far, turns into isolation. One morning, something very small happened. I woke up later than usual. She was already in the kitchen, making coffee. The room smelled warm, familiar. I walked in and said, "Morning." She smiled and said, "I already made coffee for you." Simple. Kind. And without thinking, I said, "Oh, you didn't have to." That sentence sounds polite, right? But something about it changed the energy. Her smile faded a little. "Okay," she said quietly. And just like that, the moment was gone. It took me a second to realize what happened. In my mind, I was being respectful. Independent. Not wanting to be a burden. But what she heard was something else. She heard, "I don't need you." That's the thing about communication. It's not just about what you say. It's about what the other person feels when they hear it. Later that day, I kept thinking about that moment. Why did such a small sentence create distance? The answer is simple, but not easy. Because in a relationship, small things are never just small. They carry meaning, emotion, history, and sometimes, unspoken expectations. In American culture, saying you don't have to can mean respect. Giving someone freedom. But in a relationship, especially in quiet emotional moments, it can sound like rejection. That's where the clash happens. Not in big arguments, but in small, daily interactions where meaning gets lost in translation. We started noticing more of these moments. She would ask, "Do you want to eat together?" And I would say, "It's okay, I'll eat later." Logical. Flexible. But slowly, those choices created separation. Two people. Two schedules. Two lives, inside one house. We weren't fighting. But we were drifting again. Have you ever experienced that? Where everything makes sense logically, but emotionally, something feels off? That's because relationships don't run on logic alone. They run on connection. And connection needs intention. There's a concept called emotional bids. It's when one person reaches out in a small way, asking a question, sharing a moment, offering something. And the other person has a choice. To turn toward it, or turn away. When she made coffee for me, that was an emotional bid. When she asked to eat together, that was another. And without realizing it, I was turning away. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't see it. That's the danger of routine. You stop noticing the meaning behind small actions. You respond automatically. And automatic responses slowly disconnect you. One evening, we had a small disagreement. Nothing serious. Just about something simple, what to do over the weekend. She wanted to stay home. I wanted to go out. Before, we would avoid this kind of conversation. But now, we were trying to be more honest. So we talked. And for the first time in a while, it felt uncomfortable. I just feel like we don't spend real time together, she said. We're together every day, I replied. That's not the same, she said. And she was right. Being physically present is not the same as being emotionally present. You can sit next to someone for hours, and still feel miles apart. That night, we didn't solve the problem. But we saw it clearly. And clarity, even when it's uncomfortable, is better than quiet confusion. Here's what I learned during that time. Rebuilding a home is not a straight line. It's messy. It's slow. And sometimes, it feels like you're going backward. But those small clashes? They're not signs that things are falling apart. They're signs that you're finally paying attention. That you're no longer hiding behind silence. That you're choosing to face the truth, even when it's inconvenient. In the days that followed, we started doing something different. Not big changes. Just small adjustments. When she made coffee, I didn't say, "You don't have to." I said, "Thank you. I like this." When she asked to eat together, I paused and said yes more often. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to show up. And slowly, those small choices started to rebuild something. Not perfectly. Not quickly. But genuinely. Because a home is not built by avoiding problems. It's built by facing them, together. In the next part, I'll share the moment when everything almost broke again, when we felt like maybe we were too late, and what finally made us stop running from the truth. Because sometimes, before things truly get better, they get very, very real. The night we almost broke. Have you ever felt like you were trying, really trying, and still, something kept slipping through your hands? Like you're doing all the right things, saying better words, paying more attention, but deep down, there's still this quiet fear. What if it's too late? That fear doesn't show up loudly. It whispers. And the night it spoke the clearest to me, everything felt fragile. It was late. Around 11 p.m. The house was quiet again, but this time, it wasn't the same silence as before. It wasn't empty. It was tense. Like something was waiting to happen. We had just finished another long day. Work, responsibilities, the usual rhythm of life in America. We had been trying, talking more, noticing small things, saying thank you, saying I miss you. On the surface, things were improving. But under the surface, something was still unresolved. That night, it came out. We were in the kitchen. Not sitting this time. Standing. A small difference, but it changes the energy. Sitting feels safe. Standing feels like you're ready to leave. She said, "Can we talk for a minute?" And I knew, this wasn't going to be a light conversation. "Yeah," I said. There was a pause. Not the comfortable kind. The kind where both people are choosing their words very carefully, because they know those words matter. Then she said something simple. "I feel like we're trying, but I'm still not happy." That sentence didn't sound angry. It sounded honest. And somehow, that made it harder to hear. Because anger is easier to respond to. Honesty requires you to face something real. My first instinct was to defend. "We've been doing better," I said. "We've been talking more." And that was true. But it wasn't enough. She nodded slowly. "I know," she said. "But it still feels empty sometimes." There it was again. That word. Empty. The same feeling I had noticed weeks ago. But hearing it from her made it impossible to ignore. Have you ever been in a moment where you realize both of you are feeling the same pain, but somehow, it still doesn't fix anything? That's where we were. Two people. Same house. Same effort. Same emptiness. And for a second, it felt hopeless. My brain started racing. What if this doesn't work? What if we're just too different now? What if we already lost something we can't get back? Fear has a way of making everything feel final. Like this moment decides everything. But here's something important. Not every hard moment is the end. Sometimes, it's the turning point. The difference is what you do next. That night, I almost shut down. I almost said something safe. Something like, "It'll get better," or "We just need more time." But those are delay sentences. They don't solve anything. They just push the truth further away. So instead, I stopped trying to fix the situation. And I tried to understand it. I asked, slowly, "What feels empty?" That question changed everything. Because instead of defending myself, I was opening a door. She took a breath. "I think we talk more now," she said. "But we don't always feel connected." That sentence hit deeper than I expected. Because she was right. We had improved our communication. But connection is something else. You can talk every day. You can say all the right words. And still feel disconnected. Why? Because connection is not just about words. It's about presence. Attention. Energy. It's about how you say something, not just what you say. That night, we were finally talking about the real problem. Not the surface. Not the routine. The core. And it was uncomfortable. There were long pauses. Moments where we didn't know what to say. Moments where it felt easier to stop talking. But we didn't. And that was new. At one point, she said something that stayed with me. I don't want a perfect relationship, she said. I just want to feel close again. That sentence changed the direction of everything. Because suddenly, the goal wasn't fixing everything. It was something much simpler. Feeling close. And that's something you can build. Not all at once. But step by step. I said, I want that too. Simple. Honest. No extra words. And for the first time that night, the tension softened. Not gone. But lighter. There's a principle in psychology, when two people share the same emotional goal, even if they don't know how to reach it yet. The relationship becomes cooperative instead of defensive. That's what happened to us. We stopped being two people trying to prove something. And became two people trying to understand something. That shift is everything. We didn't solve all our problems that night. We didn't suddenly feel perfect. But we did something more important. We stayed. We didn't walk away. We didn't shut down. We didn't escape into silence. We stayed in the discomfort, long enough to hear each other. And that's rare. Because most people leave that space too early. They avoid it. They distract themselves. They protect their comfort. But comfort doesn't build connection. Presence does. Before we went to bed, there was one small moment. No big speech. No dramatic ending. Just a quiet pause. And then she said, "Thank you for staying." Not for fixing. Not for solving. Just for staying. And in that moment, I realized something. Sometimes, what saves a relationship is not what you say. It's what you don't run away from. In the next part, I'll show you what happened after that night, how we started rebuilding something deeper than before, and the small daily habits that slowly turned our house into a place that finally felt like home again. Because sometimes, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to stay a little longer than your fear tells you to. The turning point we didn't expect. Change doesn't always feel like progress. Sometimes, it feels slow. Almost invisible. Like nothing is happening, even when everything is quietly shifting underneath. That's where we were after that night. No big transformation. No dramatic breakthrough. Just two people, a little more aware, a little more honest, trying again. And strangely, that trying again felt different this time. Not heavier. Not forced. Just intentional. The next morning didn't come with a new version of us. The same kitchen. The same sunlight. The same routine. But something inside had softened. We weren't avoiding each other anymore. We were noticing. Have you ever noticed how much of your life runs on autopilot? You wake up, do the same things, say the same words, react the same way. Your brain loves patterns because they save energy. But in relationships, autopilot is dangerous. Because connection requires attention. And attention requires effort. That morning, something small happened again. I walked into the kitchen, and she was there, making coffee like usual. But this time, I didn't rush. I didn't just say good morning and move on. I paused. I looked at her, not quickly, not out of habit, but really looked. And I said, "You look tired." Not as a comment. As a question. She smiled a little, surprised. "Yeah," she said. "I didn't sleep well." That was it. But something about that exchange felt different. Because it wasn't automatic. It was present. That's where the turning point started. Not with a big decision. But with small moments of awareness. There's a concept called micropresence. It means being fully there in small interactions. Not distracted. Not halfway listening. Just there. And those micro moments? They started to add up. We began asking slightly better questions. Not just how was your day? But what made your day hard today? Not just are you okay? But what's been on your mind lately? Simple changes. But deeper. And here's the interesting part. We didn't suddenly become better at English. We became better at meaning. Because when your intention is clear, your words don't have to be perfect. One afternoon, we were sitting together, not talking much. But this time, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt calm. Safe. That's a different kind of silence. The kind that doesn't separate you, but holds you together. And I realized something in that moment. Silence is not the problem. Disconnection is. Silence can be peaceful, if the connection is strong. It can be painful, if the connection is weak. Same silence. Different meaning. That realization changed how I saw everything. Before, I thought we needed to talk more. Now, I understood, we needed to connect better. Talking is just a tool. Connection is the goal. And connection doesn't always look like long conversations. Sometimes, it's a small touch. A shared glance. A simple sentence said with attention. That week, we started creating small rituals. Nothing complicated. We had coffee together more often. We sat at the table without phones. We asked one real question each day. Just one. Not a list. Not an interview. Just one moment of honesty. And slowly, something shifted. Not outside. Inside. The house felt different. Same walls. Same furniture. Same everything. But the energy? Warmer. Lighter. More alive. Have you ever walked into a place and felt something, without knowing why? That's what was happening. We were changing the feeling of the space, by changing how we showed up inside it. One evening, I noticed something I hadn't seen in a long time. We were laughing. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just, naturally. Over something small. A misunderstanding in English. A word said wrong. And instead of correcting it seriously, we laughed. That moment mattered more than it should. Because it reminded us of something we lost. Playfulness. You see, when relationships become too serious, too careful, too controlled, they lose their life. They become safe, but not alive. And being alive is what makes a home feel like home. There's a reason children learn faster than adults. They're not afraid to be wrong. They play. They experiment. They laugh at mistakes. Somewhere along the way, we lose that. We start protecting ourselves too much. And in doing that, we lose connection. So we brought it back. Not perfectly. Not every day. But often enough. We stopped correcting each other all the time. We started listening more than fixing. We allowed conversations to be imperfect. And that made them real. Here's something I didn't expect. The more we focused on small moments, the less pressure we felt to fix everything. Because everything is overwhelming. But this moment? That's manageable. That's human. That's real. One night, as we were getting ready to sleep, she said something simple. It feels different lately. I looked at her and asked, better or just different? She smiled. Better. That word stayed with me. Because it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't perfect. It was just better. And sometimes, better is exactly what you need. Not a perfect relationship. Not a perfect home. Just something that feels a little more real. A little more connected. A little more alive. That's the turning point we didn't expect. Not a big moment. Not a single event. But a series of small choices, repeated daily. To notice. To stay. To speak. To listen. And slowly, those choices started to rebuild something we thought we lost. In the next part, I'll show you how those small habits turned into something bigger, how our home started to feel truly alive again, and the surprising moment when we realized we weren't just fixing our relationship, we were creating something new. Because sometimes, you don't go back to what you had before. You build something better from what you learned. Rebuilding, one small habit at a time. Most people think change happens in big, dramatic moments. A deep conversation. A powerful decision. A turning point that shifts everything overnight. But real change? It's quieter than that. It hides in small habits, repeated when no one is watching. That's where we found ourselves. Not in a perfect place. Not suddenly healed. But somewhere in between, where things were still fragile, still imperfect, but finally moving in the right direction. And what surprised me the most was this. It wasn't one big action that changed our home. It was a series of small habits that slowly rewired how we lived together. Have you ever tried to fix something in your life all at once? It feels overwhelming, right? Your brain resists it. Because big change feels risky. But small change? That feels manageable. And that's exactly what we leaned into. We didn't try to fix our relationship. We focused on daily moments. Small ones. Repeatable ones. Real ones. One of the first habits we built was something simple. We stopped starting our day on autopilot. Before, mornings were quick and efficient. Wake up. Check phone. Grab coffee. Move on. Now, we slowed it down just a little. Instead of good morning as a routine phrase, we added one small question. How do you feel this morning? Not what's your plan. Not are you busy today? But how do you feel? That question changed everything. Because it shifted the focus from tasks to emotions. Some mornings, the answer was simple. Fine. Other mornings, it opened a door. I didn't sleep well. I feel stressed. I feel okay, just tired. Short answers. But real. And real is where connection begins. There's a principle in neuroscience. When you name a feeling, your brain reduces its intensity. It's called affect labeling. In simple terms, when you say how you feel, your brain calms down. And when someone listens without interrupting, that calm becomes connection. We didn't know the science at the time. We just felt the difference. Another habit we built was something we called one real moment. Not a long conversation. Not a deep talk every day. Just one real moment. It could happen anytime. While cooking. While driving. While sitting together in silence. The rule was simple. One person shares something real. The other listens. No fixing. No judging. Just listening. At first, it felt strange. Almost forced. Like we were trying too hard. But over time, it became natural. Because when you create space for honesty, honesty shows up. One day, I said, I still feel afraid sometimes, that we might go back to how we were. That wasn't easy to say. But it was true. And instead of responding quickly, she paused. Then she said, I feel that too sometimes. Not don't worry. Not it won't happen. Just understanding. And that understanding? It brought us closer than any solution could. Here's something important. You don't need to solve every problem immediately. Sometimes, you just need to feel seen. That's what we were building. Not perfection. Presence. Another small habit we added was removing distractions during certain moments. Not all the time. We didn't become perfect. We still used our phones. Still watched TV. Still lived normal lives. But during meals? Phones away. During conversations? No screens. At first, it felt uncomfortable. Like we didn't know what to do with the extra space. But that space is where connection grows. Because connection needs attention. And attention cannot compete with constant distraction. One evening, we were sitting at the table, no phones, just eating. At first, it was quiet. Then I said something random. Do you remember when we first tried to speak English together? She laughed. Oh no, we were so bad. And just like that, the conversation started. Not planned. Not forced. Just alive. We talked about old memories. Mistakes. Funny moments. And for a while, it felt like time had gone backward. But it wasn't going backward. It was reconnecting with something we lost. Another habit we didn't expect to matter so much was appreciation. Not big compliments. Not dramatic words. Just small acknowledgements. Thank you for making coffee. I like when we eat together. I noticed you tried today. Simple sentences. But they carry weight. Because appreciation does something powerful. It tells the other person, I see you. And feeling seen is one of the strongest emotional needs we have. There's research showing that relationships grow stronger not because of big gestures, but because of consistent positive interactions. Small things. Repeated often. That's what we were doing. Without even realizing it, we were changing the emotional climate of our home. Before, it felt quiet but distant. Now, it felt quiet but connected. Same silence. Different meaning. And slowly, something else started to happen. We began to enjoy being together again. Not because everything was perfect, but because it felt real. Safe. Alive. Have you ever noticed that when something feels real, you don't need it to be perfect? That's the difference. Perfection creates pressure. Realness creates comfort. One night, as we sat together, doing nothing special, I had a thought. This feels like home. Not because of the house. Not because of the furniture. But because of the feeling. And that's when I realized something important. A house becomes a home, not when everything is in place, but when you feel connected inside it. We weren't done. We still had things to learn. Still had moments of distance. Still had days that felt off. But now, we had tools. Habits. Awareness. And most importantly, intention. In the next part, I'll show you how these small habits led to something bigger than we expected, how our home didn't just feel better. It started to feel meaningful. Because sometimes, the goal isn't just to fix what's broken. It's to build something that feels worth staying for. A dream we finally said out loud. There's a moment in every relationship that feels small on the outside, but changes everything on the inside. It's not about fixing what's broken. It's about finally saying something you've been holding in for a long time. For us, that moment didn't happen during a big conversation. It happened on a quiet afternoon. No plan. No pressure. Just one of those slow days where time feels a little softer. We were sitting on the floor in the living room. Not on the couch. Not in our usual spots. Just on the floor, leaning against the wall, talking about nothing important. Or at least, it started that way. Have you ever noticed how the most meaningful conversations don't start as meaningful? They begin with something random. A small memory. A simple question. And then, somehow, they go deeper. That's exactly what happened. She looked around the room and said, "Do you think this place feels like home now?" It was a simple question. But it carried a lot inside it. A few weeks ago, I wouldn't have known how to answer. I might have said something safe. Something like, "Yeah, it's fine." But now, things were different. I paused. Not to avoid the answer, but to feel it. And then I said, "Sometimes, yes. But not always." That honesty didn't create distance this time. It created space. She nodded. "I feel the same," she said. And just like that, we were in it. Not avoiding. Not pretending. Just sharing. Then she asked something I didn't expect. "What do you think we're missing?" That question stayed in the air for a moment. Not heavy. Just real. And for the first time, I didn't try to find a perfect answer. I just said what came naturally. "I think, we never really talked about what we want this home to be." She looked at me, curious. "What do you mean?" And that's when something shifted. Because we realized, we had been focusing so much on fixing the past, that we forgot to imagine the future. We were repairing. But we weren't creating. There's a big difference. Repair keeps things from breaking. Creation gives things meaning. And meaning is what makes something last. So we started talking. Not about problems. Not about what went wrong. But about what we actually wanted. Simple things. Real things. I want this place to feel calm, she said. I want to feel excited to come home, I added. I want us to laugh more. I want us to feel like a team. No big dreams. No unrealistic expectations. Just feelings. And as we talked, something interesting happened. The house didn't change. But the idea of it did. It stopped being just a place we lived in. And started becoming something we were building together. That shift is powerful. Because when you have a shared vision, even a simple one, everything you do starts to connect to it. You're not just living. You're creating. There's a concept in psychology called shared meaning. It's when two people create a sense of purpose together, something that goes beyond daily tasks. And relationships with shared meaning are stronger. More resilient. More alive. That afternoon, without planning it, we started building that. We didn't write anything down. We didn't make a plan. We just talked. And that was enough. At one point, she smiled and said, I want this home to feel like a safe place, even on bad days. That sentence stayed with me. Because it was simple. But it was everything. A safe place. Not a perfect place. Not a happy all the time place. A safe place. Where you can be tired. Where you can be quiet. Where you can be imperfect and still feel accepted. That's what we had been missing. Not more talking. Not more effort. But a shared understanding of what we were trying to build. From that day on, something changed again. Not dramatically. But clearly. Our actions started to align with that vision. When one of us had a bad day, we didn't try to fix it immediately. We just made space. When things felt off, we didn't ignore it. We acknowledged it. Because now, we knew what we were protecting. Not just a relationship. But a feeling. A meaning. A home. And here's something I didn't expect. The more we focused on what we wanted to build, the less we were controlled by what went wrong before. Not just fixing, but creating. One evening, as we were sitting together, doing nothing special again, I asked her, do you think we're getting closer? She didn't answer right away. She looked at me, smiled softly, and said, I think we're becoming something new. That answer meant more than yes. Because it wasn't about going back to who we were. It was about becoming something better. Something more aware. More intentional. More real. Have you ever realized that sometimes you don't need to go back? You just need to grow forward. That's what we were doing. Not perfectly. Not quickly. But honestly. And that honesty became the foundation of everything. In the next part, I'll show you the moment when it finally hit us, when we walked into our own home and felt something we hadn't felt in a long time. Not comfort. Not routine. But belonging. Because sometimes, the question isn't where do you live? It's where do you truly feel at home? The day it finally felt like home. You don't always notice the exact moment something changes. There's no sound. No signal. No clear line between before and after. But sometimes there is a moment. A quiet one. Simple. Almost easy to miss. And somehow, it stays with you. For us, it happened on a completely ordinary day. No celebration. No special occasion. Just a normal day in our life in America. The kind of day we used to ignore. The kind of day that used to feel repetitive, even a little empty. Not heavy. Not distant. Just calm. I put my keys down and stood there for a second. Listening. Not for noise. But for feeling. Have you ever walked into a place and immediately felt something, without knowing why? That's what happened. Nothing had changed. Same walls. Same furniture. Same light coming through the window. But something inside me said, this feels different. I walked into the kitchen. She was there, cutting vegetables. No music. No TV. Just the soft sound of movement. She looked up and smiled. Not a big smile. Not forced. Just natural. You're home early, she said. Yeah, I replied. And then something unexpected happened. We didn't rush into conversation. We didn't go back to our separate routines. We just stayed in that moment. I walked closer, leaned against the counter, and watched her for a second. Not analyzing. Not thinking. Just being there. And for the first time in a long time, that silence felt full. Not empty. Not awkward. Full. That's when I realized something. We weren't trying anymore. We were just present. That's the difference. Trying feels heavy. Presence feels natural. For weeks, we had been building habits. Small ones. Asking better questions. Listening more. Creating space. Sharing honestly. At the time, it didn't feel like a big transformation. It felt like effort. But in that moment, I saw the result. Not in words. In feeling. We started talking, but slowly. No rush. No pressure to keep the conversation going. Just simple exchanges. How was your day? Pretty good. Yours? Better than yesterday. Short. But real. And then we did something we hadn't planned. We cooked together. Not because we had to. Not because it was part of a habit. But because it felt natural. She handed me something to cut. I did it. We moved around the kitchen without thinking too much. And at some point, we started laughing again. Not about anything important. Just small things. A mistake. A wrong word. A moment that didn't matter, but somehow mattered a lot. Have you ever noticed that when something feels right, you don't question it? You don't analyze it. You just experience it. That's what that moment was. No pressure to fix anything. No need to go deeper. Just being. After dinner, we didn't turn on the TV. We didn't reach for our phones. We just sat there. Talking a little. Quiet a little. Comfortable in both. And then it hit me. This is what we were trying to find. Not perfection. Not constant happiness. But this feeling. This quiet sense of belonging. There's a difference between living in a place and feeling like you belong there. Living is physical. Belonging is emotional. And that night, we felt it. Not because everything was solved, but because we were connected. That's when I finally understood something that sounds simple, but took me a long time to feel. A house becomes a home when you can be yourself inside it. Not the perfect version of yourself. Not the strong version. Not the everything is fine version. Just you. With your tired days. Your quiet moments. Your imperfect words. And still feel accepted. That's home. Later that night, as we were getting ready to sleep, I said something without planning it. This feels like home. She looked at me and smiled. I was thinking the same thing, she said. And that was it. No big speech. No dramatic ending. Just a shared understanding. And sometimes, that's enough. Looking back, nothing about that day was special. But everything about that day was meaningful. Because meaning doesn't come from big events. It comes from how you experience small ones. That's what changed for us. We stopped waiting for big moments to feel connected. We started noticing the small ones. And those small moments became everything. In the days that followed, that feeling didn't disappear. It wasn't constant. It wasn't perfect. But it was there. More often. More real. More stable. And we knew something had shifted. Not just in our routines. Not just in our communication. But in how we showed up for each other. And for ourselves. In the next part, I'll show you how this new feeling changed the way we saw our future, how our home became more than just a place for us, and the deeper meaning we discovered through family, growth, and everything we went through together. Because sometimes, finding home is not the end of the journey. It's the beginning of something even more meaningful. What we built became more than us. Most people think the story ends when things finally feel okay. When the house feels warm again. When the silence feels peaceful instead of heavy. When you can look at each other and say, we're good now. But here's the truth no one really talks about. That's not the end. That's the beginning. Because once you rebuild connection, something new starts to grow. And for us, that something new changed everything. It didn't happen overnight. It didn't come with a big announcement. It showed up quietly, in the way we lived each day. After that moment when our house finally felt like home, we started noticing a shift, not just between us, but in how we saw life itself. We were calmer. More patient. Less reactive. It's like when your mind is no longer busy protecting itself, it finally has space to care about something bigger. Have you ever noticed that? When you feel secure in a relationship, everything else becomes easier. Your energy changes. Your focus changes. Even your stress feels different. That's what happened to us. We weren't just fixing our relationship anymore. We were building a life. A real one. And that life started to expand. One evening, we were sitting together, talking about nothing in particular, when she said something simple. I think we're ready for more. Not more problems. Not more challenges. More life. At first, I didn't respond right away. Because I knew what she meant. And it wasn't a small step. It was a big one. Not in terms of action. But in terms of responsibility. Growth. Commitment. More meant thinking beyond just us. Beyond just fixing what we had. It meant building something that could hold more than just two people. And that idea was both exciting and a little scary. Have you ever reached a point where things finally feel stable, and then life asks you to grow again? That's where we were. But this time, it felt different. Before, we were reacting to problems. Now, we were choosing our direction. And that changes everything. We started talking about the future. Not in a rushed, pressured way. Just slowly. Honestly. What do we want our life to feel like? Not what should we do. But what do we want to feel? That question guided everything. We didn't focus on perfect plans. We focused on meaning. I want a home where people feel welcome, she said. I want a place where we can grow, not just stay comfortable, I added. I want us to keep talking, even when it's hard. I want us to stay like this, aware. Simple ideas. But powerful. Because they were real. And over time, those ideas started to shape our daily life. We became more intentional. Not just with each other. But with everything. The way we spent time. The way we handled stress. The way we showed up, even on difficult days. And here's something I didn't expect. The more we focused on building something meaningful, the less we feared losing it. Because fear comes from uncertainty. But when you actively create your life, you feel more in control. Not of everything. But of your direction. That's a powerful feeling. At some point, our home stopped being just a place where we fixed our past. It became a place where we built our future. And that future started to include more than just us. Family. Not just the idea of it. But the reality of it. And that changes everything. Because when your home expands, your perspective changes. It's no longer just about your comfort. It's about creating a space where others can feel safe, supported, and connected. That's a different level of responsibility. But also, a deeper level of meaning. There were new challenges. New adjustments. Moments where we felt tired again. Moments where old habits tried to come back. But this time, we had something we didn't have before. Awareness. Tools. And a shared purpose. We didn't avoid problems. We faced them. Not perfectly. But together. That's the difference. There's a concept in psychology called secure attachment. It means you feel safe enough in a relationship to grow, explore, and face challenges, without constantly fearing loss. That's what we were building. Not just love. Not just comfort. Security. And security creates freedom. Freedom to be yourself. Freedom to grow. Freedom to build something bigger than your fears. One night, as we were sitting together, talking about the future, I asked her something I had never asked before. Do you think we built this, or did we just find it? She smiled. I think we built it, she said. But we had to lose it first to understand it. That answer stayed with me. Because it was true. We didn't just get lucky. We went through distance. Silence. Confusion. And we chose to rebuild. That choice is what made it real. Have you ever realized that the most meaningful things in your life are the ones you had to fight for? Not in a dramatic way. But in a quiet, consistent way. That's what this was. Not a perfect story. Not an easy journey, but a real one. And now, when I walk into our home, I don't just see a place. I feel a story, a history, a meaning that goes beyond walls and furniture. That's what we built. Not just a house. A home. In the final part, I'll share the answer to the question that started everything. What makes a house a home? And I promise you, it's not what you think. Because sometimes, the answer is not something you find. It's something you become. What truly makes a home? What makes a house a home? It sounds like a simple question. Almost too simple. The kind of question people answer quickly, without thinking too much. Family. Love. Comfort. Nice words. Correct words. But if you've followed this story until now, you already know it's not that simple. Because we had all those things at some point. And still, something was missing. So let me ask you again. What actually makes a house feel like home? After everything we went through, silence, distance, small conversations, uncomfortable truths, slow rebuilding, I realized something that changed the way I see not just our home, but my entire life. A home is not something you have. It's something you create. And more importantly, it's something you choose. Every single day. You don't build a home once. You build it in moments. In the way you speak. In the way you listen. In the way you stay, when it's easier to walk away. Think about it. We didn't lose our home in one big moment. We lost it in small, repeated choices. Choosing silence instead of honesty. Choosing comfort instead of connection. Choosing distraction instead of presence. And we rebuilt it the same way. Small choices. Repeated daily. Choosing to ask one real question. Choosing to listen without fixing. Choosing to say something honest, even when it felt awkward. That's what changed everything. Not the house. Not the situation. Us. There's a powerful idea in psychology. Your environment doesn't shape your emotions as much as your interactions inside that environment. In other words, it's not where you live. It's how you live there. You can have the perfect house and still feel empty. Or you can have a simple space and feel deeply connected. That's the difference. That's the answer. A house becomes a home when the people inside it choose connection over convenience. And here's the part most people don't expect. Connection is not about being perfect. It's about being present. You don't need perfect English. You don't need perfect timing. You don't need perfect understanding. You just need willingness. Willingness to try. To speak. To listen. To stay. Even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. Because that's where real connection begins. If there's one thing I learned from this journey, it's this. You don't wait until everything feels right to create a home. You create a home, so things can start to feel right. That's a big difference. Most people think, when we stop arguing, it will feel like home. Or, when life gets easier, we'll be happy. But it works the other way around. When you choose connection, even in difficult moments, that's when things begin to change. That's when a house starts to feel alive. Let me tell you something honestly. We are not perfect. We still have quiet days. We still have moments where we don't fully understand each other. We still have times where we feel tired, distracted, distant. But now, we notice. We pause. We come back. That's the difference. Not perfection. Awareness. And that awareness is what protects everything we built. Because a home is fragile. Not in a weak way, but in a real way. It needs attention, care, presence. And the moment you stop choosing it, it slowly fades. Just like before. But now, we know how to bring it back. Not with big actions. Not with dramatic changes. Just small, honest moments. Again and again. One question. One answer. One moment of staying, when it would be easier to leave. That's enough. More than enough. So if you're watching this right now, maybe you're thinking about your own life. Your own space. Your own home. Maybe everything looks fine, but something feels off. Maybe you're waiting for things to get better on their own. Maybe you're not sure where to start. Here's where you start. Not with a big plan. Not with perfect words. Just one small moment. Ask something real. Say something honest. Listen, without interrupting. And see what happens. Because sometimes, the smallest moment can change everything. And maybe, just maybe, you'll realize what we realized. That a home is not a place you arrive at. It's a feeling you build. Together. Over time. One imperfect moment at a time. So, what makes a house a home? Not the walls. Not the furniture. Not the location. It's the people inside it. Choosing each other. Again and again. Even on the quiet days. Even on the hard days. Even when it's not easy. Especially then. Because in the end, a house is where you live. But a home is where you feel understood. If you've made it this far, then maybe this story wasn't just mine. Maybe it was yours too. Maybe you're sitting in a place that looks like a home, but doesn't feel like one. Maybe you've been quiet for too long. Maybe you've been waiting for the right words, the right time, the right moment. But what if the moment is now? What if one simple sentence could change everything? In this channel, we don't just learn English. We learn how to feel, how to connect, and how to build a real home through simple, slow English conversations. Because sometimes, the words you think are too basic are the ones that can save something important. So here's your next step. Before you leave this video, ask yourself one honest question. What is one thing I haven't said that I need to say? And when you're ready, say it. If this story touched something inside you, don't just watch and forget. Subscribe for more real English story practice. Like and share if you believe small words can change big things. Comment below. What does home mean to you? Because your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear next. And trust me, the next story on this channel? It might hit even deeper than this one.